Hello classmates, this is the Group 4 presentation for Kinesiology 443. Our topic for this presentation is Personality Profile in Sport and Exercise. The presentation was put together by Randy Sherman, April Roussel, Brian Vincent, Brianna Lockman, and Nicholas Lemoyne. This presentation is going to help everyone understand personality profiles as it pertains to sports and exercise. Some of the things that you're going to learn during this presentation is what is personality, the effect of personality on sports and exercise. So what does personality, how does it play when it comes to sports and exercise? Some of the different theories and models which relate to personality, such as the 5-factor model of personality, Bandura's social learning theory, Cattell's trait theory, coping behavior strategies, human motivation theory. And then we're also going to talk about during some of these theories and models, the various tests that are available to measure the types of personality. So what is personality? Well, G.W. Alport back in 1961 characterized personality as the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his characteristics, behavior, and thought. Personality is the total of a person's characteristics that make each of us unique. So basically what that means is personality is brought on by our own individual characteristics, whether that is bashful or shy, like to keep to yourself, outgoing personality, people that are, I guess you could say, life of the party type people. So those are some of the different characteristics which creates our personalities, and that in turn makes us all different. So how does personality affect sport and exercise? Well, in order to understand personality, you need to understand that the process of studying personality and talking about personality goes all the way back to the era of Hippocrates and Plato. Personality is one area which has been researched to determine if there are certain qualities that separate athletes from non-athletes. So there are lots of testing and individual testing to realize whether or not people are athletic or non-athletic, and how the personalities of those individuals reflects whether or not they are good at sports or good at exercise or athletic at all. The effects of personality can have a positive reaction on sports participation and performance. So if we have a football team that is winning and is on a winning streak, you will see a lot more of that positive reaction reflecting on their personality, and they will play better and continue to play better based off of those positive reactions, based off of those wins. The last point I'd like to make is that understanding an athlete's personality traits can lead to greater success in a given sport. So if you understand how a player or who a player is, a lot of times you will find coaches that will coach what they coach up a player, meaning they will give them positive reinforcement, motivation, use different tactics to help them become better and have more success in their sport. That is where the psychological process of the athlete comes from, not just the physical. So the first personality trait or personality theory we're going to discuss here today is the 5-factor model of personality. The 5-factor model of personality is based on the use of different trait theories and states that these 5 personality characteristics can be further broken down into more specific traits. These 5 factors are considered to be the basic factors of personality. And we have the 5 listed here, which are extroversion, neuroticism, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness to experience. The first of the 5 is the extroversion, which deals with an individual's tendency toward being either extroverted or introverted, and whether a person is sociable, assertive, or energetic. We can relate to most of the high-profile athletes who are very sociable. They're very energetic. So that would be, they would be displaying a extroversion personality. The next is neuroticism, and that is reveals an individual's emotional stability and the tendency to experience distress and be able to effectively handle any stressful situations. Again, a professional athlete, or even just somebody performing exercise at home. If they injure themselves, they can become emotionally unstable and display this particular trait. The next one is conscientiousness, and that deals with an individual's will to achieve goals and their dependability. And they can be described as self-disciplined, ordered, or goal-oriented. Again, most professional athletes are very goal-oriented. Begin the NFL season, most players are asked how would they like their season to go, and just about all of them would say they would want to end at the Super Bowl. So again, they would be displaying that personality trait. The next one is agreeableness. It describes a person's humanity or their emotional support or hostility, caring, or lack thereof. So it would describe somebody as being kind, cooperative, and trustworthy. A trait that I'm sure a lot of us would like to show, but in the sports world, again, all the high-profile athletes, or a lot of them, spend a lot of their times in the communities, and that is showing that agreeableness personality trait. And then the last one is the openness or openness to experience. That's related to an individual's creativity and thinking process. So whether a person is open to new feelings or ideas, how creative they want to be to achieve something, and reflecting back on the process they took to get there. These were all displayed or talked about in more detail by Craig Costa back in 2008.
One theory that molds personality is Bandura's social learning theory. This theory states that social behavior is learned essentially by observing and imitating the actions of others. It insinuates that people learn from one another through observation, imitation, and modeling. The social learning theory suggests that our personalities are not stable and constantly change in different social environments. Even calm-natured people can become aggressive while playing sports. Sports fans that are usually quiet during daily conversation can get caught up in the excitement of the game and shout or yell. This exhibits a temporary change of an individual's personality from an introvert to an extrovert. Attention, memory, and motivation are all components of this theory. An example of attention is focusing on all components of the sport, working with one's team, and focusing on a positive end result. An example of memorization is learning a play from a playbook at football practice and repeating the play over and over until it is memorized. Motivation is a key aspect to this theory because one must be motivated to do what it takes to compete well. Two large components of Bandura's social learning theory are modeling and reinforcement. First, I'll discuss modeling. Bandura performed an experiment widely known as the Bobo doll experiment. In 1973, he experimented using a small group of children. These children watched adults use aggressive behavior towards the dolls ultimately abusing them. It was proven that the children that watched the displayed aggressive behavior were more likely to copy the aggressive behaviors, while children that did not see the aggressive behaviors were not aggressive. As I continue on with modeling, an athlete is more likely to act like people he or she can relate to and mimic their behaviors. Younger athletes often try to replicate behaviors and actions of older collegiate and professional athletes. Since these young athletes view them as role models, it is imperative for them to lead by example and make good choices. You often see these young athletes trying to make the heroic one-handed catches mimicking a play Odell Beckham Jr. would make, or you'll see them attempting a no-look behind the back pass like they would see LeBron James do on TV. Unfortunately, these actions may sometimes have negative effects because they have not mastered the skills like the professional athletes have. For effective modeling, one must exhibit attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation in order to master a learned behavior. In order to be successful, an athlete must focus and pay attention, retain information so it can be reproduced correctly and effectively. Most importantly, the athlete must stay motivated to see the best results. This is an example where the old saying, practice makes perfect, comes into play. The next component of Bandura's social learning theory is reinforcement. This component means that if an individual's good behavior is rewarded, he or she will continue repeating that particular behavior. Example, if a professional in the NFL is part of a winning Super Bowl team, he will receive several monetary incentives and make history. This will drive him to want to continue his peak performance and repeat this behavior. External reinforcement versus internal reinforcement. External reinforcement is when one receives approval from others, they continue positive behaviors. An example of this would be when a football team is playing at their home field and they have more fans backing them rather than playing on the road. An increased number of fans can boost the morale for this team. Internal reinforcement is when one feels happy or fulfilled about being accepted or approved, they will continue positive behaviors. If cohesiveness is exhibited on a team and all members feel accepted, then the team will tend to perform better. Overall, positive reinforcement is related to successful performance in sports.
One personality theory that has been developed is Cattell's trait theory. This is also referred to as the dispositional theory. It was developed in 1965 by the psychologist named Raymond Cattell. This theory suggests that an individual's personality can only be understood by measuring the many traits that they possess. These traits are measured through studying an individual's patterns of emotion, thought, and behavior. And in order to measure these traits, Cattell analyzed data from report cards of students, evaluations from employees, and things of that nature, and developed tests and questionnaires consisting of personality characteristics. So Cattell believed that in order to truly understand one's personality, you have to assess the many traits that possess, when previous theories that have been developed only believe that you have to look at certain dimensions. Cattell stressed that there are many traits, many more traits than would have been mentioned in previous theories. So how was this theory developed? Raymond Cattell developed his personality trait theory due to his disagreement with Eysenk's personality theory. Eysenck believed that personality could be understood by assessing only two dimensions of behavior. He believed that the two dimensions of neuroticism and introversion, extroversion combined to form personality characteristics. In these two dimensions, extroverts are described as being sociable and crave excitement and change, and thus can become bored easily. They tend to be carefree, optimistic, and impulsive. Introverts are described as being reserved, plan their actions, and control their emotion. They tend to be serious, reliable, and pessimistic. And the other dimension is neuroticism, which to break down that is categories as unstable and stable. Unstables tend to be anxious, worrying, and moody. They are overly emotional and find it difficult to calm down once upset. And stables are emotionally calm, unreactive, and unworried. Cattell argued that it is necessary to look at a much wider range of traits to correctly assess an individual's personality instead of just looking at two different dimensions, as Eysenck argued. Then Cattell identified 16 personality traits common between all individuals by using a mathematical technique known as factor analysis. So here's a list of descriptive terms that are used to describe the 16 different personality dimensions developed by Cattell. So you look at number 1, abstractness. If a person were to score a low score in that category, then they would be described as being a practical and regular thinker. If they were to score a high score in that category, they could be described as being a bit strange and an imaginative person, a very imaginative person, very out there. Another one, go down to number 12. The term used to describe this category is sensitivity. And if an individual receives a low score in this part, then their personality would be described as being more tough and coarse. If they were a high score, then they'd be more of a touchy and soft-hearted type person. If you go down to the bottom, warmth, if an individual received a low score in the warmth category, then they would be described as being very cold and selfish. If they received a high score in warmth, then they would be described as being a very supportive and comforting type of person. Once these 16 personality dimensions were developed, he then developed a 160 question test to measure these 16 personality factors. The test is divided into 16 parts, with each part containing 10 questions relating to each personality factor. The individual score is represented by a range of highest and lowest extremes for each of the 16 personality dimensions. So there's basically a continuum of low to highest extreme in each of the categories that a person can test. The test is still used today in marital counseling, career counseling, and for employee testing or selection.
Coping behavior strategies in sports. In psychology, coping is defined as the process of managing taxing circumstances, expending effort to solve personal and interpersonal problems, and seeking to master, minimize, reduce, or tolerate stress of conflict. In sports psychology, coping refers to conscious and effortful cognition and behaviors used by athletes to manage the perceived demands of a situation. Coping behaviors can be broken down into ineffective coping behaviors and effective coping behaviors. Ineffective coping behaviors can include defense mechanisms, crying, yelling, substance use or abuse, and denial. Effective coping behaviors can include relaxation, concentrating on goals, isolation, increasing effort, visualization, positive reappraisal, self-talk, and practicing. Researchers in sports have identified over 100 different coping strategies. A popular macro-level approach based on the work of Richard Lazarus and Susan Folkman is to categorize various coping strategies under two general coping functions. This includes problem-focused and emotion-focused coping. People using problem-focused strategies try to deal with the cause of their problem. They do this by finding out information on the problem and learning new skills to manage the problem. Problem-focused coping is aimed at changing or eliminating the source of the stress. Some problem-focused coping strategies identified by Folkman and Lazarus include taking control of a situation, seeking information, and evaluating the pros and cons of a situation. Emotion-focused coping is a mechanism to alleviate distress by minimizing, reducing, or preventing the emotional component of a stressor. Emotion-focused strategies include releasing pent-up emotions, managing hostile feelings, meditating, accepting responsibility, and exercising self-control. Research for coping strategies used by athletes is very broad. In addition to the coping strategies previously discussed, research is also being conducted on personal, gender-specific, and activity-based coping strategies. Personal coping strategies can change from athlete to athlete or situation to situation. Strategies can be used independently or in combination with one another. Gender-specific studies are being conducted to research if certain coping strategies work better for males over females. Problem-focused coping seems to be favored by males, whereas emotion-focused coping is favored by females. Athletes can also use activities as a way to cope. Coping strategies can involve a lot of noise, such as fan participation, pep rallies, and loud music. Athletes can also use coping strategies that involve quiet activities, such as using headphones in order to tune noise out, isolation, self-talk, meditation, and yoga. Coping and coping behaviors are of interest to sport and exercise psychologists because athletes are constantly under pressure to perform while keeping focus during shifts in momentum. Additional research is needed and being conducted because sports psychologists realize that sport is as much about the mental game as it is about the physical game. Researchers may not agree on the best coping behavior. However, most do agree that whatever behavior is used, the athlete should consider stress as a challenge and not as a threat, focus on the process and block out external stressors, and focus on things that can be controlled to improve your chance of reaching your goal.
Another theory that molds personality is the human motivation theory. This theory was first introduced by Abraham Maslow in the 1940s as the hierarchy of needs. It states that people are motivated to achieve certain needs and that some needs take precedence over others. The basic human needs listed were physiological needs, safety needs, the needs for belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. David McClelland expanded on Maslow's theory to create the human motivation theory, which focuses on three motivators. The three motivators are a need for achievement, a need for affiliation, and a need for power. McClelland states that the motivators are learned, which is why the theory is sometimes called the learned needs theory. Each motivator is present within everyone. It doesn't matter the gender, it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the culture. The only difference is that each individual decides on which motivator is dominant. So one might be dominant in achievement, one might be dominant with power, one might be dominant with affiliation. But we each have the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. Need for achievement. Four characteristics that are consistent with the need for achievement are striving for an average task complexity, responsibility for own performance, the need for feedback, and the use of innovation or creativity. When it comes to being achievement dominated, one must play it smart. They tend to weigh out the achievement rates in different situations before attempting them. If the task is high risk, then one may account their success to luck, whereas if the task is low risk, they may feel that their skills were not truly tested. Being achievement dominated can be seen within sports. Each player has the same common goal, which is to win. They know they have to work the hardest and they have to work the smartest in order to reach their goals. They use creativity with their plays and their positions to make sure that they win. They rely on feedback from their coaches, they rely on feedback from their team members, they even rely on feedback from the film to change different things so that it works better, so that if they didn't win, that the next time they can win. Each player is typically focused on their own performance. They typically want to get the best out of performing with their team before they worry about the team as a whole. They want to make sure that their performance is the best so that they don't mess up, so that they can help the team win. Need for power. People with a need for power attach great value to status, reputation, and recognition. Individuals tend to want to be in control and typically are competitive. There are two types of power, and they are personal or institutional. The need for personal power deals with controlling others. The need for institutional power centers around furthering a company. The need for power can be seen within athletes that are usually captains of a team. They are generally held at a different level than the other players and have a reputation to uphold. But this type of power can be seen as institutional power instead of personal power. It's seen as institutional power because the captains tend to get the team together to further each other's career. They want each player to play their position and to play it at the best of their ability. Whereas the need for personal power is usually an individual who wants to feel important, who wants to be in control over something, and doesn't necessarily have a plan to help anyone or further anyone's career. Need for affiliation. People are a gracious bunch and they want to belong to the group. When the need for affiliation is high, they want to be liked and they will conform to the group's behavior and wishes. Affiliation dominance can be seen when a rookie is new to a team and wants everyone to like him. He may start to act in ways that he typically doesn't. He may act as if he doesn't know anything so that the older players may feel sorry for him and help him. He might act as if he can run all the errands so that they will like him. Another way that affiliation dominance can be seen in sports is when a player only wants to hang around the best players. He wants to be affiliated with them. He wants everyone to know that he hangs with those players and that they are good players so that he's also a good player. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he is a good player. But just being affiliated with those players makes everyone else think that he is a good player as well.
So as we come to the end of this presentation, which we hope you enjoyed, it was very interesting to learn about the various things that apply themselves to personality and how it affects people in sports and exercise. It was very interesting reading about all the different traits and theories and models, all the different patterns that people display, how they go about displaying them, and how they are used in the sports and exercise world. The different models that we talked about were the five-factor model, the social learning theory, the Cattell trait theory, coping behaviors, and motivation. And all of those, and many more, but these are the ones that we focused on for this presentation, display or show the effect of personality profiling on sports and exercise. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as we liked researching it.